Good morning and welcome back, students. This week we're going to talk about some of the more weird and wacky instruments that are out there, and we're going to talk about what family they're on. So you may remember one of the first lessons we did was I pulled out all, the normal looking instruments like a trumpet and stuff like that. And we talked about the different families of instruments, but why don't we take a little bit of a break and look at some of the wacky instruments that are out there. I have three right in front of me. Why don't I start with this right here? You've probably seen something like this before. Sometimes they're wood, sometimes they're plastic, but these are called pan flutes. And basically all it is a bunch of pipes that are longer and shorter. And I bet you probably guessed the shorter pipes, we learned, like a trumpet, play higher, and the longer pipes play lower. Let's test that theory out, shall we? Let's play the really tiny pipe right here. Now let me try playing the low pipe down here. So it's a bunch of pipes that we can blow through, and if we do different combos, we can play different notes, different songs. So all it is, pipes that we blow over. And so let's think about what instrument family this might be a part of. There was something similar, a flute, where we blow over a hole, or if we had a bottle, it makes a sound that we did back in our physics episode. So think about it. What instrument family might this be a part of? And if you guess the woodwind family, you'd be right. It has to be a wind because we're blowing into it. So either brass or a woodwind. But brass instruments, we must be buzzing our lips to make the sound. When we play, it's our lips that are buzzing. When we blow over a hole like a flute, that's a woodwind. Let me pull out another even weirder one. Looks like something you'd find in a kitchen. This is called a mouth harp. Let me try plucking it for you. You probably can't hear anything because it's too quiet. Because we need something to resonate sound anytime we're going to play something. So we have these big long pipes, which makes it louder. So what's going to resonate on this? Well, and this is silly, mouth harps actually go, mouth harp goes in the mouth like that, and we actually huck it. Nothing more complex than that. All it is like sound effects, but some music uses mouth harp players. So you can make your mouth different shapes to make different sounds on this thing. So example, I'm going to make my mouth different shapes and use my tongue going in and out to make different sounds. Seems kind of funny and weird, right? All I'm doing is plucking right here. If you look at that, that's where we pluck. And this little metal piece vibrates. Remember, in music and sound, there's always something that vibrates to make the sound. And that is this middle piece right here. We pluck it to vibrate it. And then to make it loud, we use our mouth as the resonator. Here it is one more time. I'm going to get nice and close. And while I'm playing, think about what instrument family would this be a part? Is it a string instrument? Is it a woodwind, a brass, or a percussion instrument? Here we go. You get it right. What do you guys think? If you guessed percussion, you'd be right. I'm not blowing into this instrument. I'm plucking it. And percussion is anything you hit or strike or scrape or pluck even, unless it's a string instrument. If I was plucking strings on like a guitar, then that would obviously be a string instrument. So percussion. I got one more before we move to something else. And this is really cool. I just got it. It's called a kalimba. And it's an instrument I believe it's from Africa. I believe it's from Zimbabwe. And the really cool thing about this, just like how my mouth was the resonator, inside this little box, that's the resonator. And we pluck these right here, and it makes a sound just like this. I think they're really similar. It's just a piece of metal that we pluck and it vibrates, right? Same right here. Pluck this, it vibrates. But it's attached to this. It gets nice and loud because it resonates inside this box. And I think it sounds a lot like a music box. I got it maybe like a week ago, so I haven't gotten to practice it very much, but why don't I try playing something on it? Here we go. Pretty cool, right? I love this thing. Kalimba from Africa. So think about it. We pluck these, it vibrates. So what would it be? Is it a woodwind? Is it a brass? Is it a string instrument? Or a percussion instrument? What do you guys think? It is a percussion instrument because we pluck it to make a sound. Beautiful. Love this instrument. Kalimba, again. You ever want something cool for Christmas, you can get yourself a kalimba. But why don't we move to something next? Another weird instrument, but I'm going to have you guys watch a professional play this one instead of old Mr. Dooley, who's not a professional kalimba player. Let's move to something different. inventing a machine like that? I mean, this has to be somebody who's good at music. He's a musician and he's an inventor or engineer. I mean, look at this thing. It looks like it's all made by hand and it's played by marbles, of all things. Why don't we backtrack a little bit? You can see it's playing on this, looks like a xylophone. So bells right here, and the marbles are falling on it. And it's controlled all by it's pretty much works like a music box. If you guys have ever opened up a music box, it has a big wheel and has pins all on it. And if I can find a spot where it shows where it does that, the pins are striking these, which release the marbles, and the marbles hit either the bells or the bass guitar. So you see those pins? They run by and they strike those, which release the marbles. And that's how a music box works too. So we have two parts if we're going to think about instrument families. We have these bells, but also has a bass guitar. If you saw the marbles falling on the strings, and he's playing the bass guitar with his fingers right there on the fretboard. Let's see if I can find that. So you can see his fingers, he's playing that, but the marbles are plucking or striking the strings when they fall. So we're going to have to think of two different instrument families, I'm thinking, and what those would be. What do you guys think? There's brass, woodwind, percussion, and string, and there are two families at play here. And if you guessed string because of the bass guitar and percussion because of the bells, you'd be correct. The marbles strike the strings of the bass, making it a string player, the string family, and it strikes the bell parts of here, which makes it a percussion instrument. It even has the bass drum and the snare drum sound from these two paddles. I don't know if you saw that down there, but there was a cymbal too hanging underneath, which it dropped a marble down to hit the cymbal. Did you see it? What an amazing instrument. All the sounds that you guys heard is all contained in this contraption, this marble machine that is both a percussion and a string instrument. But I think it's time to move on. Let's look at some more wacky instruments, but this time with Mr. Rogers. He's a music teacher at Sonora Elementary, and he is particularly good at brass instruments. I wanted him to show off one of his wacky instruments.
Hello, hello, and good morning, musicians. My name is Mr. Rogers. I'm the music teacher at Sonora Elementary School, director of the Bobcat Band here. Mr. Dooley asked me to join you all today in introducing to you an instrument that is not so common in the area we live in. This is what we call a didgeridoo. Now, from your point of view, just looks like a big wooden pipe, right? And if you look all the way through, it in fact is just a wooden pipe. This one in particular was made in Florida, and it's actually made out of an agave tree. So if you can imagine, my friend James out there in Clearwater, Florida, found this tree, and if you can imagine, it had branches growing off of it, and it was thriving at one point, but my friend James, he goes around and finds trees that aren't alive anymore, and he cuts them down, then he shaves off the branches, cuts the whole thing in half, and shaves out that inside that we have already seen. Let's see, I'll try to get the light shining through. And then he'll glue those pieces back together, and it's pretty hard to see where he glued it back together, but I can feel right here, that's where he originally cut it in half after cutting down the tree. Again, he cut it in half, and shaved it down kind of like a crescent shape on each half, glued it back together, and he ended up with this. All right, here's the front end of it. Okay, so this is where the sound would come out. For us brass players, we would consider this to be the bell of the instrument. What's unique about this one also is James created a rosewood mouthpiece. Didgeridoos usually don't have a mouthpiece that's built in. You usually have to get like a glob of beeswax and custom shape your own mouthpiece, and over time that beeswax will sort of just kind of fall apart, and you have to regenerate that mouthpiece and remold. And as you progress as a didgeridoo player, you have different preferences of mouthpiece shapes and sizes. So this instrument originated in Australia. Australia is a country, and this instrument was not invented originally for music. By today's standards, we would consider this to be a very musical instrument. It was in fact invented for hunting and for ceremonial purposes. So if I was going to go out there and try to hunt down a wild animal, I would use this instrument to try to lure the animal in. And I'll give you an example of what that would sound like in a sec. We try to mimic the sound of that animal. So this is a sound that it's an indigenous bird of Australia. It's called the kookaburra, and this is what it would sound like if I tried to lure one of those birds in to hunt. And if that animal came close enough, I would have an opportunity to hunt and kill the kookaburra and eat it for dinner. So that's one of the original purposes of the didgeridoo. Now I mentioned again, it was also brought along for ceremonial purposes. Say if there was a memorial ceremony for someone who has passed away, we would use this, you probably heard that lower sound, which is what we call a drone. It's typically a low pitch, but drones can be high, drones can be low, but it's one pitch that sustains over a long period of time, and you can sometimes sing over that drone. You can also add certain sound effects. As you heard earlier, the kookaburra is kind of a shrieky, high-sounding bird. So, of course, we wouldn't make those sounds in a ceremony. We would make something that's more somber, more, meditative. You can hear that I'm able to manipulate the vowel of the sound. And the way we accomplish this is, as I'm playing, I'm actually shaping my mouth a little differently into like an O and an oo and an E. I bring my tongue back, and it changes the sound ultimately into that vowel, right? So, that's one way to remember how to change that sound, is I'm actually sort of shaping my mouth into didgeridoo, which is, again, the name of this instrument. And you might be wondering to yourselves, what do we classify this instrument? What family of instruments? We have our strings, we have our voice, we have woodwinds, and brass and percussion, right? So those are our main families of music instruments. It's made of wood, right? So you might think, okay, it's a woodwind. But keep in mind, especially those of you who are in band right now, this might seem familiar to us brass players. I'm actually buzzing my lips into the instrument. So it's sort of like, okay, it's made out of wood, but I'm buzzing into it like a tuba. So, right, we would call this like an international instrument kind of category. You can buzz into it, but it's made out of wood. It's similar to why we classify flutes under woodwinds, right? The sound doesn't come from any kind of wood, but the flute at one point originated as what we call a fife, which is a wooden style flute. And a lot of flutes today are made out of wood. So, but a lot of them are also made out of silver and brass and stainless steel, mostly metallic materials. So we still call it a woodwind instrument. I would call this probably a woodwind instrument, probably a brass instrument. There are didgeridoos that you'll find out there that are made out of like a PVC pipe. You can actually go to Lowe's down the street, get a thick PVC pipe, cut it into whatever length, depending on what pitch you want. The shorter the instrument, the higher the sound. The longer the instrument, the lower the sound. This is a pretty long didgeridoo. It creates a sound of a low C underneath the bass clef staff. So you tuba players, that C 1 and 3, that's what this note is. You'll notice one more thing is that when I'm playing, I'm kind of not playing on the center of my mouth. I'm playing toward the edge of my mouth. And it's actually really easy to manipulate the sound if I have my teeth closer together. So here we go. Here's one more example of that. So there we are. One more thing I'll tell you before we head out is that you'll notice there's another voice that's singing above the drone. And that's actually my singing voice. We call this in wind playing multiphonics. So multi meaning more than one, phonics meaning sound. So multiple sounds is what that means. So if I'm buzzing my lips, I can sing above that pitch. That's how we create that sound, and we can sing melodies over it. We can sing more complex passages on the didgeridoo. So there you are, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you, Mr. Dooley, for having me. Peace out, Falcons.
All right, and a big thank you to Mr. Rogers, the music teacher over at Sonora L, for giving us that demo of the didgeridoo. But why don't we look at another pro like Mr. Rogers? And this guy is a street performer over in Europe. And I think you can already tell this is going to be some pretty unique instruments being played here. So let's take a look.
same time, I don't have 11 arms. So someone please help me play the glockenspiel. It's very easy, can you do that for me? It's just two notes over here. When I point at you, it's B, C. We practice. Great, that's good. Okay.
Boy, this guy cracks me up, and it also impresses me because he's such a good musician. His name is Anders Flanders, and he's a one-man band. You can see he has so many different instruments on. We can see an accordion here. We can see a cymbal on his head. We can see on his back is a big old, I can't even tell what it is, a big old plastic container. It has a little bass drum pedal, and it hits. That's attached to his foot, so every time he takes a step, the bass drum pedal hits that and sounds like a bass drum. And he also has a pair of cymbals somewhere here, if I can find it, that's attached to the other foot and crashes whenever he takes a step with the other foot. So one foot's the bass drum, the other foot's the cymbals that you can hear watching. So all his foot movements are making percussion sounds on the bass drum thing that he has on his back and the cymbals. But what about the accordion? Well, the accordion has little tiny reeds on the inside, and when you push and pull on that, it pushes air through those reeds. And reeds are a woodwind instrument feature. So this is a woodwind instrument. Finally, he has an electronic piano. And that electronic piano, remember, pianos are percussion. Can you find any more instruments? Did you see the 3 microphones that he sings into? One makes like a distorted voice kind of sound, takes his voice and distorts it. You can see a soundboard on his back on top of the bass drum. And these other 2 mics do other things as well. So he's playing a bunch of stuff at once. A bass drum, a cymbal, a piano, an accordion, and he's also singing at the same time. Oh, I finally found the cymbal. It's up here on top over his head. My goodness. That is some impressive and unique instruments. But speaking of electronic instruments, why don't we head on over? I have an electronic instrument I'd like to show you that you've probably never seen before. Why don't we switch over to that? Hey guys, this is a funny instrument called a Natoma Phone. And it looks funny, it looks like a music note. It's got a little face, and it sings. And we control the singing right here on this bar. If I push down on it, it makes a sound. If I'm way up high up here, it makes a low sound. And if I play way down low here, it makes a high sound. So it's like opposite. Up high is down here, down low is down here. And it's an awful fun instrument to play on. It's electronic, so it needs batteries. Put them in there, and you're ready to go. So I figured I could bring this in and maybe you could hear some songs and we can play Guess That Tune. So I'm going to play some songs, and I know you know them because they're songs that almost everybody knows. And we'll see if you can guess that tune. Here's our first one. All right, here we go. What do you guys think? Do you know that tune? Well, if you guessed Mary Had a Little Lamb, whoops, I'm sorry, not Mary Had a Little Lamb, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or the alphabet song, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you'd be correct, because the alphabet song and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star are the same song. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. And notice as I get higher, it gets higher. And as I get lower, it's that way, or I should say, if I get higher, it gets lower. As I get higher, it gets, or lower, it gets higher. Let's go to song number 2. Here we go. This is a holiday song since we just got out of the holidays. There it is. What do you guys think? Do you know that song? I bet you do, because if you guessed Jingle Bells, you'd be right. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey! All right, one more. And then we're going to talk about what family of instruments that this fits into. This is our one and only electric instrument we talked about. Remember, it runs on batteries. If it didn't have any batteries, it wouldn't make these sounds. Last one. Here we go. Oop. Whew. Hope I didn't do too bad on that one. If you guessed the school song, Drop on by, we're up the hill, you'd be right. Drop on by, we're up the hill, we're the kids from Soulsby Vale. That one's quite a bit harder to play on this thing. Since there's no places to mark where you put your fingers on this, you have to use your ear and muscle memory to remember where notes are. So why don't we talk about what instrument family this is a part of? We have our 4 instrument families: percussion, which is anything we hit or strike to make a sound. We have woodwinds, which are those wind instruments that we blow into, and they usually have holes in them, or use reed or something along those lines. Brass, which is usually like a trumpet, a big long pipe that we buzz our lips to make a sound, also wind. Or strings, which are instruments that use strings. What do you think? If you guys guessed percussion, you'd be right. We don't blow into it, so it's not a woodwind or a brass. It doesn't have strings, so it's not a string instrument, but we do press down on this to make the sound. I have to press on it. So the act of pressing makes it a percussion instrument. And that's in the same family as drums and all that. Sometimes percussion can kind of be the family that gets the oddball instruments because they don't fit into strings, brass, or woodwinds. And that would be one of these. Again, this is an Natoma Phone, and they're awful fun to play. Natoma Phone. Now, guys, we're going to say goodbye. Me and Natoma Phone. because we'll continue next lesson on something different, most likely more music around the world. So I will see you for the next one. I hope you guys learned some more about instrument music families and discovered some cool, odd instruments that are out there. I'll see you guys next time.